everybody. It's Dave here and Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers been talking publicly about the Minnesota Vikings, and talking publicly, I mean we were blogging way back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's been a long time. And we like to take our time and do deep dives into certain topics, and today we're going to do one. Our first theme, we are going to explore what we can expect from JJ McCarthy as he leads the team into the 2025 season. Second theme will be this week in Vikings land. We're going over the second wave of free agency. And then we're going to end up talking about proposed rule changes. There's some whining going on from some NFC North counterparts of ours. We'll all get into it on this episode of Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey everybody, it's Dave here once again, and Darren over there. How's things in the Great White North?
Not bad, Dave. How are things in Austin with you? Packed up yet?
No, we're only about maybe a third the way packed. Still got a little bit of time, but the house hunting continues, and we'll see how it goes. I think we found one we like, and we'll find out. So,
best of luck moving. One of my favorite things to do. Nope.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, sure. I'd rather have a root canal than move, but it is what it is.
You love it that much, eh?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it gets everybody a fresh start, and it's cool and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
My daughter will have now some assets, hard assets, rather than just rentals. So we'll see. And thank you, SKOL Mafia. We appreciate it. And it's time to start this story. The story of Theme 1. What are the expectations fans have, and what are the expectations that we can deduce from looking back at JJ McCarthy in high school, college, and the year he's been with the Minnesota Vikings? How are they going to come together in 2025?
Great questions, Dave, which we are going to delve into now. And want to say SKOL, everybody out there. SKOL to Sean, Kelowna, BC. I have been there before. One of the warmest places in Canada. You actually can find rattlesnakes there. Wow. It's kind of a deserty type thing. And yeah, thanks, SKOL Mafia, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Hi, Dr. Proto, Raymond. Hell, everybody on there so far. Glad to have you along. But yes, JJ McCarthy, with this week with NFL insiders, finally it seems to have resolved themselves that Aaron Rodgers will not be coming to Minnesota, at least for now. Then it got me thinking about, well, I'm assuming that JJ McCarthy is going to be the guy that's going to be the Vikings starting quarterback in 2025, at least for now. And it got me thinking about, with him being the starter, presumed starter, what kind of year can we expect him to have in 2025? And what also got me thinking about this was, you sent me a clip from Good Morning Football this week, Kyle Brandt talking about the Vikings moves with JJ, what the Vikings moves as a team, and how that indicated that they were all in on JJ McCarthy. And he brought up that there are 11 quarterbacks since the AFL NFL merger that sat their first year basically, and then were starters week one. And one of them was a Viking, Daunte Culpepper, actually in 2000. And Brant also mentioned that of those 11, Culpepper is the only one that has led his team to the playoffs in that year as a starter. We've been doing this lately, Dave. I decided to use artificial intelligence to kind of research what those, how many quarterbacks, who these 11 quarterbacks were that Kyle Brandt was referring to. He didn't mention them all. I didn't find all of the 11, but I did find a fair amount. And some of those, I use ChatGPT. Dave uses Grok. It comes in quite handy on the research for both of us. But, some of those names on that list were, it got me thinking about what could we potentially glean from those 11 examples, or however many we found, that could get us thinking about, give us a baseline for what JJ McCarthy might be able to do on the field in 2025. And really, some of those names, though, are some pretty bad examples. JP Lossman, Jake Locker, a couple of guys that Kyle Brandt mentioned, not good examples of guys who barely played as rookies, became starters their second year. And for Lossman and Locker, they really struggled in their first year as starters in the league. Really, really struggled in JP Lossman's case. And they were out of the league, a few years after that. But now those are the bad examples, but there's plenty of good examples out there of players who either sat their whole first year like JJ McCarthy did, or played barely at all and then became starters their second year. And some of those guys have had either very good careers or were Hall of Famers and have won Super Bowls. Very good careers. Daunte Culpepper is one example. Tom Brady was another guy. Didn't play barely at all as a rookie. Second year as a starter, comes in for injured Drew Bledsoe, leads the Patriots to a Super Bowl. Drew Brees is another example of a guy who didn't play much in his rookie year at San Diego, came in a second year and played very solidly in his second year as a starter for San Diego. There's also Michael Vick is another example. Barely played as a rookie, became a starter week one, had a very solid rookie year. Carson Palmer, another example. And then the GOAT of second-year starters would be Pat Mahomes, who, again, he threw, I think, 33 passes in his rookie year. Second year, explodes, throws for over 5,000 yards, 50 touchdown passes, has a completions percentage of, well, you got all the numbers up there. Took them to the NFC Championship game, I believe, and he's gone on from there. So lots of great examples there of players who sat the first year and then played their second year, were named starters by week one of their second year, and really, again, either played solidly that rookie year or played really, really well in Mahomes' case. So, those are good things that you can look to with JJ McCarthy becoming the presumed starter this year, Dave, in 2025. When you look at those seasons, though, Dave, I guess the problem with it is that I don't think any of those really indicated to me, there's a whole bunch of different contexts for each player as to the situation they were coming in as far as the team goes and how ready they were heading into that second year and the coaching staffs they had behind them, that it makes it difficult to say, I think, make a definitive statement that we can expect JJ McCarthy, based on these 11 other guys, to do X in 2025. I think that's very difficult to do. But I think what we can do, and what you did, Dave, using your assistant, was you used Grok to kind of look at what JJ McCarthy has done in the past and last year in 2024, when he had to sit out the year with the meniscus injury that ended his season, what he's been able to do to prepare himself and what the Vikings have been doing to prepare him for the eventual thing that's going to happen here this season and when he's going to be the Vikings' number one guy. And what you can say about JJ McCarthy he has been a very, very busy boy in what he has done. Some of the things that he's worked on in the offseason last year, and it's going to continue this year, is that there was a big emphasis on cleaning up his footwork technique. And to do that, with the Vikings felt that that would also help with him in his pocket presence, movement in the pocket, which is very important for a quarterback success. And that in would also help with his accuracy throwing in the pocket. He did a ton of work on that, really refined his footwork technique compared to where it was at Michigan. And that's going to continue this year. Now, once he's able to get back on the grass and work in OTAs and training camp. And that, I think, is a sometimes an overlooked aspect of developing a quarterback, but a very important part of it. And JJ McCarthy and the Vikings have put in a ton of time on this with him, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of benefits in 2025 for him and the Vikings. Another thing that he did was, and we heard about this last year, was a good picture there, but he had weekly meetings with Kevin O'Connell during the season, even though he was out for the year. This wasn't all about X's and O's, Dave. A lot of it was about building relationships with his coach, but they certainly talked about football, about life, but also about the offense. And, I think that gave JJ McCarthy a good opportunity to ask Kevin O'Connell throughout the year, once a week for about an hour. I think they met every week, about the whys in the way that Kevin O'Connell runs the offense, why they do things, why that's the best way to do things. And I think that, along with the way that JJ McCarthy and his insane work ethic, the way he's been able to, he's had almost a year now, soaking in the playbook, Kevin O'Connell's playbook. I'm sure he knows that like the back of his hand now, but that's going to continue to accelerate in this offseason. So you've got that, along with him having a close relationship and working with Kevin O'Connell on why do you do these things. I think that's going to lead to he'll have a great level of comfort in this offense when he steps onto the field for real in 2025, which is going to benefit him and the Vikings. A third thing that he's done is, you didn't hear as much about this, but he'd been using virtual reality throughout last year to improve his processing skills and improve on the making decisions and the speed of the game. A lot of people will remember that this is something Jaden Daniels remarked during his insane rookie season as really helping him make the adjustment from college to the NFL and really thriving in the NFL. Well, JJ McCarthy has been doing the same thing, and I'm sure he's going to continue to do it this year. And I think that, again, is going to help with his processing skills, getting used to the speed of the game when he gets to play for real. I think a final thing that he's done, and you would think that all quarterbacks do this, but maybe they don't. But McCarthy, once his season was ended, he made a point of reaching out to the defensive players and joining defensive meetings and getting an idea about what are they looking for in their film sessions as a defensive player, and trying to get an understanding of how the defensive players look at offenses and how they try to attack them. And I'm sure that's going to be something that, time permitting, he's going to continue to do in the offseason and even in the regular season. And I think, again, that learning from McCarthy, that work ethic from him, the ability to understand what defenses are looking for and what they're trying to attack and exploit on offenses and quarterbacks, is going to be invaluable heading into 2025. So I think all of this, is going to lead to a player coming into 2025 in training camp and exhibition games and eventually the regular season, is you're going to have a confident player, you're going to have a well-schooled player, you're going to have a player whose technique and fundamentals are very strong for a second-year guy, and he's going to be very confident and comfortable playing at the NFL level and at the speed. And all of those things are great, great, great for a young, inexperienced quarterback like him. And with the moves that the Vikings have done, Dave, in the offseason, he's stepping into as good a situation, I think, as a young quarterback could be stepping into. A lot of them get drafted by crappy teams, and the situation is with not very good weapons to throw to, poor offensive line, coaching might not be the best, your defense might not be that good. You cannot say that about the Vikings, at least on paper right now, heading into 2025. So the Vikings have done a lot to their roster to set JJ McCarthy up for success. And that, along with the work that he has done and the Vikings have put into him, I think is going to lead to him we should be confident that he can have a productive and very good, not a rookie season, but first season as a starter with the Vikings. Now, what would that look like, Dave? I think based on what he did in college and the weapons that he has to work with and the defense that he'll have to support him, that if he plays, if he's healthy and he starts all 17 games, I think that, I think a reasonable expectation for him would be, like 3,700 to 3,800 yards, perhaps, 25 touchdowns, a completion percentage of around 65%, low interceptions, and interception rate, which is something that he did in college at Michigan, maybe around the 9 to 10 mark. I know the schedule is very difficult, but again, what the Vikings have done with this roster is as they've got a great support system for JJ McCarthy to reach those numbers, and that I've got up there. And maybe, I don't know, Dave, do you feel that those are realistic? Maybe for the Vikings to get where they need to go, at least make the playoffs, maybe he has to play that good anyway.
I think they're the base. I think they're the bottom. And this is the reason why. Now, any AI is a tool, and I use Grok because I can get sources. It goes to StatHead, Pro Football Reference, it goes to PFF, it goes to all of them, and gives me sources. So I can validate that the data it's giving me is true and accurate. And so it's a tool to help with our deep dives and deep thoughts segments that we used to do in PDF form, we now do in video, and this helps drive this. Now, the answer I got from Grok on this was very, very extensive, but it basically came down to what you're reading there. He's got the supporting weapons, and we know that on the offense. He's got, he most likely will be comparable to the second year of Trevor Lawrence, which is just over 4,000 yards, 66.3% completion, 21 TDs, 14 interceptions, up to maybe even Joe Burrow at 4,600 yards. If he does that, man, we're rocking. We're rocking. I mean, those are approaching Patrick Mahomes numbers. And Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT. He's the one that set the records. However, because McCarthy has a lack of game experience, I specifically told, give me conservative numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go way out. And how good could he be? I said conservative. What should we expect conservatively of him? And those were the numbers that Grok basically produced. I ran it multiple times, basically got all in the same ranges each and every time. Now, we go back in our history to Daunte Culpepper. Here's Daunte's numbers when he started. He had almost 4,000 yards, 33 passing touchdowns, 16 interceptions, completion rate of just under 63%, passer rating 98, rushing 470, rushing TDs 7, and that'll come into play. And he played 16 games, won 11-5, and was the MVP runner-up. Obviously,
took us to the NFC Championship game, and we won't get into what happened after that.
Yeah, the cheating Giants. Yes, we know that. But it was a great start. Now, we're talking in an era in 2000 where the Vikings, that era was more run-focused than pass-focused. And they had Robert Smith as the leading rusher. Right. And he set the team record at the time at 1521 yards rushing. And he was doing great. And we know, hey, thank you again, Mafia. We really appreciate it. We know that team had some great wide receivers, Hall of Famers on it. And the offensive line was decent. And it was a very, very, very good team. Well, JJ's coming into the same sort of situation. He's got some very good wide receivers. At least one of them should be a Hall of Famer when he's all said and done. He's got a tight end that can catch the football. He's got Jordan Addison to go with, our number 2 wide receiver, and whoever is playing wide receiver 3, it'll work. Doesn't matter. It could be TJ Hawkinson at tight end. It could be whomever. We've got now a dual-headed running back situation after Aaron Jones came in and had his best year last year. And we improved the offensive line tremendously. So, is he going to be a Patrick Mahomes, reach his records of 5,000, what was it? Over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns? No, I don't think that's it. That's the high end. But he will make this low end, in my opinion. And I say that is the low end we should expect. And it could be much, much better. I'm excited. I'm optimistic. I think it will be better. On this Wednesday, when we did Who Will Be King with the NFC North, they asked me over under 35 touchdowns. And I said, ooh, that's about the perfect number for me. And I would go, yeah, let's go over 36. So we'll see. May not have been touchdowns, maybe 3,500 yards. And I went over on that easy. But he's set up. As long as he stays healthy, which there's no reason to think he won't, we've got ourselves a good quarterback. And this is like I said, the floor.
Right.
We can go on up and it could be much better. Now, upon the search, doing the queries on Grok and how it works and the betting lines and such, when we plug these numbers in, they asked how many games can we win this year? And it said 10 to 12 with our schedule. If we win 10 to 12, we're most likely winning the division and going into the playoffs because of who we play this year. We have a much tougher schedule than we did last year when we had the AFC South.
Yes.
So, hey, I'm all for it. I think this can happen. I think it will happen. You've had KOC, you've had all the coaching staff, down to Udinsky, who's no longer with us. Get with him. Talked about he goes into the D-line room and asks them what they're looking. He goes in the defensive room and he picks the mind of Brian Flores. How many people prepare like that? There's not many. You might say Mahomes did, but that's it. Dave, yeah, his floor is extremely high. I think he's that good. So, hey, I think 2025 is going to be a blast. I can't wait.
The couple of non-McCarthy things, and we're not finished yet, but I just see, I think Rob was mentioning, have we seen anything about Jordan Fuller signing with the Vikings? I have not, but he would be another corner that we would be adding to our room. We'll be talking a little bit about that, but we'll check up on that later. Maybe somebody else can corroborate that one. Right. I think Gary asked us, Dave, you and I, what we think the Vikings are going to do with their salary cap space, remaining salary cap space. And we'll get into that a little bit in the next segment as well. But Jordan Fuller, he's getting up there a little bit in age, I think, but a lot of experience as a starter in the NFL. I would not be opposed to the Vikings adding him to the cornerback room. Or did he play safety last year? I'm trying to feel like he's kind of switched back and forth lately. But he's been a solid. He's been a solid NFL player, yes, particularly with the way Flores uses safeties. Sometimes they're, playing as much in the slot as they are playing in the deep half of the field. So, I think Fuller would be a useful addition for the Vikings if indeed they have signed him, considering we do have, particularly on the cornerback side, I still have some questions about our depth there.
Mm-hmm.
But
now, Michael says he fully expects McCarthy to have at least a similar year to Jaden Daniels. That would be...
We're cooking with gas if that's the case.
It's quite possible. It's quite possible, Michael, and I think it could happen. And I didn't even get into all the love fest that Jim Harbaugh says about him, and putting in he's the best quarterback in the draft by far, and he loves him, and he wants to trade for him and all that shit. Not that he wants to trade for him. That's a rumor. But anyways.
Yeah. I see Rob saying now that it looks like Fuller is signed with the Falcons. So I guess the Vikings didn't add him. Anyway, that's our look at kind of what we can think we can expect from McCarthy in 2025. I don't want to end it quite here though, Dave. I did want to put a bow on the whole Aaron Rodgers stuff from the week, which has been great for First and SKOL and just about any other Vikings website as far as
and it's also great for the Steelers and the Giants.
yeah, true. But again, now that it looks like, at least for now, Aaron Rodgers is not coming to Minnesota.
Despite what Diana Rossini says. Yes.
Yes. And we still have reporters, NFL insiders like Rossini and Alec Lewis from The Athletic and others who are they're couching their language on Rodgers. They're saying like, well, Rodgers isn't coming to Minnesota now, but the Vikings haven't closed the door on that yet. And we talked about this last week, Dave. Tyler got into it this week as well, saying the reason that these writers are bringing this up is just basically they're trying to drive traffic to their social media accounts and to the websites for the publications that they work for. And Alec Lewis and Paul Allen, the voice of the Vikings on radio, got into this a little bit last week, I think on K-Fan, where Lewis was defending his reporting on this, and Allen kind of said, look, the Vikings never had any interest. You're saying that the Vikings had serious discussions about bringing Rodgers into the hall, and Lewis and Paul Allen said there was never any serious discussion about that among the Viking people in the Vikings building who matter. So it was, if you can find the transcript of that, it was a pretty good read. Which
makes you wonder, who did they ask?
Yes.
Was it a janitor, equipment's guy? Who?
Well, and that's what Paul Allen was getting at too. Yeah, your sources might have said, Alec, that the Vikings were seriously considering it. But if it was the video room guy, I don't think that instead of Kevin O'Connell, which is who I talked to, then your sources were, not as important as mine. But anyway, this whole thing, I just feel like you and I, Dave, will never know how serious or if there was any discussion on this at all amongst the Vikings, head coach Kevin O'Connell and his staff, and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's general manager. Although I do think that the fact that Rodgers was going to get released by the Jets was not really breaking news. We were pretty sure that was the way it was going to go. So every NFL team had to know that Rodgers was going to be available to the highest bidder once the league year started, and the Vikings knew that as well. Now, Kevin O'Connell, being the guy he is and knowing as much about quarterbacking as he does, I'm sure that he did think in his mind, and he asked guys there was some discussion, I'm sure, about what would it look like for Aaron Rodgers to be in the Vikings offense. Now, how serious that got to, we'll never know. I don't think it could have got very serious because, again, what was going to happen with Aaron Rodgers with the Jets, I think it was pretty clear the road that was going, where that was going. And so the Vikings would have known even before free agency, once the year was over, that this would be a possibility. So anyhow, but I understand people who say, well, if you turn the keys to the Vikings over to JJ McCarthy, it's risky because he has yet to play in an NFL regular season game. There's no, we've got no stats, nothing other than a quarter and a bit of preseason to judge him at the NFL level. And yes, if things don't go well in 2025, with the way this roster is set up now, if McCarthy falters, if he doesn't play as well as we think he will, then you're really holding this team roster back, and they might not make the playoffs when with a better quarterback play, they certainly would. With really good quarterback play, they probably challenge for an NFC championship in a Super Bowl. So that is the risk. But you know, Kevin O'Connell always talked about in the past how, NFL teams fail quarterbacks more than quarterbacks fail their teams. And I feel with what we were talking about, Dave, what the Vikings have done in the offseason, they're doing as much as they can to make sure that JJ McCarthy does not fail. If you look at the things that they have done this offseason to support JJ McCarthy, the things that they've done to address the interior offensive line, adding to the running back room, so you've got Jordan Mason to supplement Aaron Jones, who's turning 30. And that, I think that gives you a different skill sets at running back and ability for the running game to be more effective than it has been in the past 3 years under Kevin O'Connell, which is going to help JJ McCarthy. If you look at just the way that they have addressed the defensive line interior and that should strengthen the Vikings defense, which is going to help the offense and going to help JJ McCarthy. You look at all of those things, that again is setting up JJ McCarthy to have as strong a supporting cast as almost anywhere in the NFL. Maybe, I don't know, there's few places where I say JJ McCarthy is stepping into a better situation. Maybe the Eagles, like maybe the Detroit Lions. You could certainly make arguments there. If he was put into that situation, he's in a position to succeed. But what the Vikings have done right now, I think they've taken out as much risk as they can in JJ McCarthy stepping in there. And look, eventually you've got to make a decision. You drafted him to be the starter. Eventually you got to make that decision to start him. And if I think it comes down to, if JJ McCarthy can play, he can play. There's no point in waiting another year. And if with this roster, as long as it stays healthy, even with the schedule we have, if JJ McCarthy cannot play well enough to take this team to the playoffs with that roster, then maybe he's not as good as we thought he was. So let's get on with it. Like I said last week, it's time to start. If he can play, he can play, and I think he can. And Dave, you think he can. So it's time to start this thing.
Yeah, and we go over top quarterbacks like Brady, Breeze, and Palmer that started their second year and did well. I think the guys got it. I can't wait. I think he will be, our longtime franchise quarterback and our first since Culpepper, and before that Tarkington. So I think it's going to go well. And all the people, the naysayers, he hasn't done anything. Well,
yeah.
Neither did Brady, Mahomes, Palmer, Drew Brees until they did.
Yeah.
And they were given a chance, and they did. Well, he's going to be given a chance. So, because I don't see KOC. KOC taking on Aaron Rodgers is idiotic. Aaron Rodgers brings Aaron Rodgers offense. Well, KOC, Coach of the Year, and is a quarterback guru who has a very good play caller, and his offense, it's not going to meld together. It's not going to happen. So JJ's it. And I'd rather have JJ. There's better odds of JJ leading us to the Super Bowl than a 41, soon to be 42-year-old washed up quarterback. So, but
there you go.
That's the expectations we gave them. They were conservative. That's the floor. Around 3,800 yards. What was it? 25 touchdowns. Didn't include the handful of rushing touchdowns because he does run.
He does run. He runs when he has to, not because he wants
designed.
to.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's got great pocket presence, as was mentioned earlier before. I think we're going to be just fine, and I think we're going to love it.
Yeah, and of course there's going to be some growth pains, perhaps, some struggles here and there, but every quarterback deals with that. Certainly Sam Darnold dealt with it at times last year, even when he was playing really well, and was a veteran of 6 seasons. So yeah, you got to find out eventually what you have in JJ McCarthy, and they didn't draft him 10th overall to sit for 2 seasons, I think, when especially with the way he looked in the offseason last year and in that spring, then the first exhibition game, the first preseason game, where he threw 1 interception, but otherwise you would really have a hard time finding fault with anything he did on that field.
Yeah, because he took that, he flushed it, he learned from it, and he went and bang, bang, bang. It was just beautiful.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's the end of Theme 1, and we hope we got you excited. This year could be from good, the floor, to epic. And hopefully he does become epic, and we'll see. Now on to Theme 2. Our favorite one. This week in Vikings land.
Yes. Well, are we past phase 2 of free agency, the second wave?
We're still in the second phase.
Yeah, I guess.
But we're almost done.
Yeah, but we're almost done the second wave of free agency, and things slowed down a bit this week, Dave. Like last week, you and I were sending messages every 20 minutes with all the Vikings activity, and last week it was kind of more like once or twice a day. It was a bit more reasonable, but the Vikings still were busy. They were still active in filling out the roster, and they did some things in free agency. Kind of the first one would be if you were looking around and trying to figure out who Tim Jones was, you weren't the only one.
I almost got a picture of Tom Jones to put up there and go, oops, wrong Jones.
But yeah, that was, I had to look and check out who Tim Jones was when the Vikings signed him. Looks like if he makes the team, which isn't a guarantee, that he'd be a special teams guy, kind of replacing Trent Sherfield, but maybe not playing as much on offense as Trent Sherfield did, but he'd be kind of replacing him as a special teams guy. That's the kind of addition he was made. But so I don't think that was an impactful signing, but the 2 other signings they made last week could potentially be more impactful. And one of them was that the Vikings signed former number 3 overall pick in 2020, Jeff Okudah, who used to play for the Detroit Lions and last year played for the Houston Texans. So that was a significant one because we just talked a little bit about my concerns about the cornerback room depth, and this was one attempt by the Vikings to address that. Now, Okudah things haven't turned out very well for him as a pro. And he's been injured a lot.
Ruined him.
Yeah.
You forgot to stop at Atlanta too.
That's true. Yes, he was in Atlanta, but last year with the Texans, he only played 77 defensive snaps, and his PFF grade over those 77 defensive snaps was 33, which is pretty bad. But again, only 77 defensive snaps. Now, again, he's struggled when he's had to play as a pro, and he struggled to stay healthy. But what I have been reading about Okudah, and I haven't seen him play a lot, is that his strengths are that he is very physical at the point of attack. He likes to play, press coverage, and also that he's way better as a slot guy than he is on the outside. So, the Vikings needed to add some depth to the cornerback room. Okudah does that in a way. He's only signed for 1 year. We haven't seen financial terms, but they're going to be pretty small, I think, for him. So not a big risk signing him. But Brian Flores is not a dumb guy. We know that. And he's going to use players to their strengths. And so if Okudah has to play next year, I think that you're going to see that Flores uses him in the slot and not on the outside, so plays to his strengths, which makes sense. Now, again, I think that Okudah is going to get it here in Minnesota? No, not really. But again, 1 year, minimal risk. I'm sure and if he doesn't get it, well, the Vikings can, there's probably the way the contract is set up, they could release him after the preseason and look for another veteran who needs a team that they think is a better option at that point. I don't think Okudah is guaranteed a roster spot in 2025 at the Vikings, but it does, the signing of Okudah is a bit of a trend that the Vikings have done since Kwesi Adofo-Mensah became general manager here, is that they've been taking swings at failed first-round picks. They did it in 2022 when they traded for Jalen Reagor. They did it in 2023 when they signed Marcus Davenport away from the Saints. And then they did it last year when they signed Jerry Tillery. And now they've done it this year again with Okudah. Now the Reagor, the Davenport, and the Tillery signings did not work out well for the Vikings, but there were swings and low risk and low money and low trade compensation that they gave up in the case for Reagor. I don't think it's going to work with Okudah either, but it could. And again, the year and the financial likely is minimal risk. So, and the Vikings needed to add to their cornerback room, and they've done that. And I don't think that they're done. But there is upside with Okudah. He was picked number 3 for a reason at one point in time, and it wasn't that long ago. Maybe he can find it in the right defensive system, under the right defensive coaches, and maybe that place is here in Minnesota.
Could be.
One guy I'm a bit more bullish on the signing was the Vikings signed Rondale Moore this week as well, the 5'7" Rondale Moore. And I like this signing, although the caveat being that, of course, is that he had a serious knee injury last year when he got traded to Atlanta. He missed the whole season. And so if that knee injury is impacting his explosiveness, his wiggle, his speed, that's a big, big problem for Rondale Moore, because at 5'7", he's not going to be able to offset it with size. He's not going to be boxing out guys and winning 50-50 balls. But I like it. I'm sure the Vikings have checked his medicals. They wouldn't have signed him if they felt that the knee injury has really limited to those things that I just mentioned. And he has a skill set that we don't really have on the Vikings roster. Like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, as much as we love them, as great as they are, and Jalen Nailor too, they're kind of similar receivers. Like they excel at long, well, Justin Jefferson excels at everything, but they're not jet sweep guys. They're not guys who can usually take screen passes and with a little bit of blocking can take it to the house. Rondale Moore is a guy you can put him in the backfield, hand him the ball. He could take it to the house. You could, again, throw a ball a yard behind the line of scrimmage, get a couple of big round bellies in front of him, and he can disappear and wiggle, and he's gone. I think that sort of thing, and on the jet sweeps, reverses, gadget plays, he has got that explosiveness and big playability, and I think that if healthy and if used the right way, he could give us a big boost. And, of course, with Jordan Addison maybe getting suspended 3 games, he might have a bigger role early on than people think at the moment with this Vikings offense. So I like this signing. And Dave, every now in free agency, we get things right. He was one of the guys that we'd identified as someone we would like the Vikings to bring in at wide receiver, and the Vikings have done that. We also identified Ryan Kelly and Will Fries. Fries wasn't really a big guess on our part. Everybody thought he'd be a target for the Vikings, but those are 3 guys that we had on our radar, and the Vikings also had them on their radar, and they signed all 3. So cheers for us for getting a few right.
Now, Gary asked, are we going to do a mock? Gary, we won't do a mock, as in 2 old bloggers, until I think it's a week before the draft. And Darren and I will come up with a list of who we think we're going to draft. And we pitch that against Tyler's list of who, when he does his final mock, to where we think it is. And we're going to see who comes closer. I do believe Darren and I came closer last year than Tyler did. And hopefully this year we can include Sal in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But That's to answer your question, Gary. Now, speaking of round bellies and hiding little teeny tiny receivers behind them, this week, Mr. Garrett Bradbury was signed by the Patriots.
Yes. In free agency, when you start a new league year, Dave, it means that a lot of changes on the roster. You're bringing in new people. You're also saying goodbye to players that were on your roster before. And Garrett Bradbury was one we said goodbye to. Released him last week. Yes. Sad times or not. but the Vikings were trying to trade him and get something for him, but then it got leaked that they were going to release him if they didn't trade him. And so when that happens, of course, you're never going to be able to trade the guy because you have no leverage, and the Vikings had no leverage. So they released him, signed with the Patriots. Good for Garrett, good guy, and all of that. But it ends a disappointing 6-year run for Bradbury with the Vikings. You're just PFF grades. But when Ryan Kelly got signed last in the first wave of free agency, we knew that Bradbury was a goner. There was some talk about maybe the Vikings will move him to guard. I don't think that he's never played guard, I think, at any level of football. So that wasn't really going to be in the cards, I think, for him. And so the release comes as no surprise. Welcomed by a lot of Vikings fans, I think, because he was in his 6 years with the Vikings. I think he was always looked as a weak link on an offensive line, which wasn't that strong anyway. He is very mobile, and I loved the way he could get out on running back screens and that sort of thing. But he just tended to couldn't handle power, couldn't anchor very well in pass protection, tended to get overpowered a lot. And I think that really impacted the Vikings running game, particularly in the red zone when, space is at a premium and you need to be able to move guys to create any kind of running room at all. Bradbury just couldn't do that on a consistent basis. And so if you look at his PFF grades, not that great. 2022 was the best they had him, and that was at like 67.5, and even that's not fantastic. And then other than that, he was below 62 point whatever and below the other 5 years. So this is a guy that was drafted 18th overall in 2019. You get drafted at 18th overall, you're expected to be a consistent Pro Bowler. And what we got from Bradbury was a below average center. And he was outperformed by two guys picked after him, Elton Jenkins and Eric McCoy. Now, Jenkins, a bit of a caveat there because Jenkins has never played center in the NFL. He's been a guard and a little bit at left tackle with the Packers, but still, the Vikings had drafted those guys instead of Bradbury. Their offensive line would have been better off. So I don't think anybody is really, too many Viking fans are going to shed any tears that Bradbury is now not a Viking and that he's playing for the Patriots. And they're also going to be Dave, man, you got me dying here with that music. But I think that they are very enthused to see Ryan Kelly and how much of a difference he's going to make in pass pro and in run blocking in 2025.
I agree. I think it's a good move. It's a good move. And it was a long time coming that Bradbury, when we drafted him, we thought he could be the answer. And obviously that didn't turn out to be the case. And it just took a long time to get rid of him. So to move on. Hey, hopefully he does well in New England. I wish him well. I mean, unless we're playing him, that's fine, but I doubt it. Drake May's going to probably be going, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
And that's going to start in training camp when he pulls his hands out and they're dripping with ass sweat. But anyways.
Oh, man.
You wanted to revisit the report cards and how that impacted free agency.
Yes, well, during free agency, we talked about the NFL PA's team report cards a few weeks ago on the show and talking about how the Vikings once again got top rankings, ranked second for the second year in a row, and they were first the first time that the report card came out. So, and we didn't talk about it in that show. We have talked about it in other shows where we brought this up about how we felt that this should give the Vikings an extra edge in attracting free agents to the Vikings and coming here. But we never really had, at least I didn't have any real proof that that was actually the case, other than, surmising that players would appreciate it if their training facilities are top of the line and the food is top of the line compared to other places. But this week we did get some proof, particularly from Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, who had the Vikings put them in front of the media this week. And the media got to ask them. Finally, they got to ask them some questions, and both of them specifically mentioned how the fact that they have heard through these reports and other players in the league that the Vikings just do a great job of treating their players and their families well, that was a significant reason why they signed with the Vikings. Jonathan Allen gave a lot of detail on this in his 12 minutes with the media. He said when he got released by the Redskins, he met with his agent, who's from Minneapolis, is based in Minneapolis, by the way, and Allen had 5 things that were a priority for him. And those 5 things, as I remember, none of them had to do anything with money. A lot of them had to do with off-the-field stuff, and particularly how his family would be treated if they went to a particular franchise. And he said the Vikings have a reputation for, he knew if they went there that his family, when they came, if they went to games, they were going to be treated very well, and that his family would be able to participate in off the field activities and they'd be made to feel part of the community. And he said that those were big reasons why he signed with the Vikings and almost didn't consider anybody else to sign with. So there we have it. Some proof that NFL players do look at these report cards and take that into account when they're deciding where they're going to play, what team they're going to play with next when they hit free agency for whatever reason. Now, that doesn't mean money is not a big, still, a major factor. The New England Patriots this free agency period are proof of that. They had the most salary cap space of anybody. And they signed a bunch of free agents, including Milton Williams, who a lot of Vikings fans wanted to see go to the Vikings, even though they finished 31st in that team that NFLPA team report card. So if you can offer NFL players and free agents bags of money, that's still going to be a large reason why they sign with you. But Allen and Hargrave did show
just a job when it comes to Bradbury.
Yeah. But Hargrave and Allen did show that the Vikings, what they're doing off the field with their facilities, with how they treat their families, with the game day experiences, all that stuff, that matters to at least some players, and it is helping them bring in quality free agents.
Hey, I think it's great, and the Wolves are very, very good owners because of it. They've opened up their pocketbooks and they've paid for everything that's been asked for. So it is awesome. No problem, Julian. There's anyways, Cincinnati, Jonathan, that's the Cincinnati beating players' kids, effing family treatment. What's happening out there? What is it? The Arizona, they don't even feed their players.
No, they got to pay for it.
They got to pay for it. And one of their players I know said, yeah, I go to McDonald's and Burger King and all that sort of stuff every day. Why? Because I don't get fed good food. Why should I eat good food when it's cheaper to go here? But Jonathan, it's different ways to run your organization.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think one of the issues with Cincinnati has always been that they are kind of a cheap organization.
Yes.
They don't put the money into it under the Browns that a lot of other teams have. And I don't know that has to do with their ownership situation. Maybe they don't have access to the capital that the Wolves have. Maybe they would like to, but they don't. And we hope they continue to not invest in their team facilities. We hope all other 31 NFL teams do a shitty job at this.
I think they are working on their practice facility. And the Browns are getting a new stadium, and it's become a competition between the owners, which we'll get into in Team 3, to who can one-up each other. Yeah. But, yes, there are players that's just give me the cash bag. Give me the bag of cash, and I will play for you, whether it's good or not. And I know New England's working on improving there. Kraft's already said it, but we'll see. I think it's a great thing.
Hey, you want the work environments of all for players to be enhanced everywhere they go. I think
all the employees.
Yeah. Final segment for this week in Vikings land just has to do with when we talk about signings and free agency and that sort of thing. But we know that the Vikings right now, it seems like we talk about this every week, but the Vikings just have the 4 draft picks going into April's draft. That's the lowest amount of draft capital of any NFL team right now. Now, I do expect that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is going to be working the phones real hard during draft week to get more draft picks than the 4 that we already have. But if for some reason that doesn't prove to be successful, his efforts prove to be successful, and the Vikings don't significantly improve the amount of draft picks that they have, then I think we've got to watch for the undrafted rookie free agents as a way that the Vikings are once again going to build out that 90-person roster. And right now, even with all the activity that the Vikings have done, particularly because they've sort of backloaded a lot of the money on the contracts, they still have $31 million in cap space according to Over the Cap, which seems like a large amount considering how many players they have signed and for the amount of money they reportedly signed them for. But this is important because when, again, right now the Vikings with just the 4 draft picks, the rookie pool that they have to sign them is about $5.6 million, which is peanuts. And it would only count about, according to Over the Cap, $2.2 million in the salary cap, which means if the Vikings, even if they're going to make some more signings here in the second wave of free agency, but it'll be low money, for low financials.
We're filling the roster spots.
Yeah, filling the roster. They're going to be signing for vet minimum and that sort of thing. It's not going to impact the salary cap that much. So I think coming into the draft, we're going to still be pretty comfortable in the salary cap and the amount of dollars that we can give out. Why is that important with undrafted rookie free agents? Well, because even though you've got a very minimal amount, I don't think it's under $200,000 that you can give as far as signing bonuses to undrafted rookie free agents. But there's no limit on what you can guarantee their base salary for. And that is important. If you remember in 2023, the reason the Vikings got Andre Carter III was because they guaranteed his base salary at $300,000. That was the most of any undrafted rookie free agent. So of course he's going to come to Minnesota. They're going to pay him the most. And this will be important because of the Vikings, again, if they can't increase significantly the amount of draft picks that they have, if they stay at 5 or they can only get 4, if they stay at 4, they can only get maybe 5 at the most. It's going to be important for them I think you're going to see them be really active in the undrafted rookie free agent situation and be really liberal in the amount of salary that they're guaranteed to the rookies, the undrafted rookies that they really like, to get them into the Vikings and build that roster because they don't have the draft picks to do that this year. And this has been a successful strategy for the Vikings. Like we all know about the Ivan Pace, but he was just one player. But just look at last year with what they did with signing Gabe Murphy and Bo Richter and Dwight McGlothern, who all made the team. They didn't play a lot, but Murphy didn't play mostly because he was injured most of the year, but Richter was on special teams the whole year and played a lot of special teams. McGlothern didn't play that much, but he got dressed late in the year, played some special teams. But if you look at those guys, they probably did as much as a 5th rounder or a 6th rounder or a 7th rounder would have done for you. And again, I think if the Vikings don't have a lot of draft picks, it's going to be important for them to have the salary cap space and the financials to watch for them to really guarantee some undrafted rookie free agents like significant base salaries, and watch for them to bring in the best undrafted rookie free agent crop of all the NFL teams, and they might have to build out that roster.
Yep. No, they're going to have to because they don't have enough. And one of the advantages of going that route, once you get to a certain point in the draft, A lot of players don't want to be drafted because they don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if a team says, "Hey, we want you," we'll be done at the end of the 5th round if we keep all our picks. And so if we selected all the present selections without moving down, after that, Kwesi's going to be on the phone. "Hey, you don't get drafted, I want you here.
Yeah,
we'll give you guaranteed money." And people could say, "Hey, I don't want drafted in the 7th round. I want to go to Minnesota. They're guaranteeing me $300,000 or whatever it is, and it's a better team, and I got a better chance." Now, some of the undrafted look at it for the money, and some of them look at for the opportunity.
Yes.
What position do I play, and is that room going to be? Do I have a chance to make a difference in that room? And they're going to, what's their best chance of doing that? And they'll go that route. And Minnesota, over the last couple of years has needed people. So they think, well, I got a chance to go to Minnesota. Say we get another linebacker. Say he steps up. Say we get another corner to fill out. Well, I'm sure we're going to have a corner in there too. Fill out that room to compete. There's all sorts of ways to get in there. A 4th tight end, right?
Yeah.
We need a 3rd one, but maybe a 4th tight end for developmental. It makes different. It makes a huge difference because you're tight end coming out of wherever university, and you look at the Minnesota Vikings and go, they only got 2.
Mm-hmm.
4 are going to make the team. I could be one of them if they don't draft one. And so they're going to push for that sort of deal. And that's where we can find bargains and have found guys that have excelled. And it's a good policy, especially when you're short on draft picks because you traded them for proven players like TJ Hawkinson. Is the philosophy. But we'll see. Next season, we have our full draft complement, which is going to be weird for the first time. And people asked, what are we going to do with the extra money? The $31 million. We're going to fill out the rest of the roster using it with the low end guys, and not all of them will even count, but they can roll it over in the next year. We're over a cap right now for 2026, but the estimate for the cap right now in 2026 is probably low. It's probably going to be 10 million more than that. And then we'll be closer and we can roll it into that. And Kwesi hasn't had to do any weird extensions or converting bonuses this year to pay for players. And they could still do that. So we're going to have play. I'm not worried about money in the 2026 range. And if perhaps some mysterious trade, like the rumor of Sauce Gardner happens, sure, right? We have the money. So
yeah,
it is what it is. I think, believe it or not, I think Kwesi's working this masterfully on the free agent side. We want to get his draft picks a little bit higher quality, but free agent wise, he's working this, and they're working the money to get out from Kirk Cousins and all that. God, it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And that brings us to theme 3. The league meeting's coming up.
It is, Dave. So this isn't a specific Vikings-centric theme, but it impacts the Vikings and every other NFL team. So I did want to talk about, with the new league year, like you get new rosters, new players, and new spaces and new places, and that's always very exciting. But also with the new league year, there's the potential for new rules to come in that also change the way the NFL is played in the next season, like last year's kickoff rule, which really didn't amount to much when all was all said and done, really.
Well, they're talking about doing some tweaks to it, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess it did lead to less concussions and injuries, which is a good thing with the players. But anyway, so this year is no different. You've got a bunch of, I think 7 or 8 rules that have been submitted for consideration in the league meeting, which will be March 30th to April the 2nd.
Down at the Breakers in Palm Beach, Florida. And if you haven't seen the Breakers, it's a hotel, resort, and golf course. Just go Breakers, Palm Beach, Florida, Google it, whatever, and take a look. It is freaking gaudy on
I'm sure.
how
I'm sure
it
it's
is.
a piece of shit. Yeah. Not likely. But yeah. But
it's
anyway,
the dining room, a portion of the dining room in the background.
Yes.
Painted ceilings and columns and all sorts of stuff.
But there's some rule changes that are being brought up for consideration. Some of them, a lot of them, by NFC North rivals of ours, and some of them are pretty significant ones that, if agreed upon, would change how the game is played. So I did want to talk about those a little bit. And the first one is that the Eagles, not an NFC North rival, but the Packers have submitted a rule change to ban the tush push. And it's not often that I'm in agreement with anything that Green Bay proposes or does, but in this case, I am on board with this. And there's been concerns about the tush push, that it's unsafe to players, unfair advantage, and all of that. I guess just when I look at it, I don't agree. I've always had a problem with another offensive player providing some extra help to a ball carrier to move them forward. It seems to me, as a defensive player, it's tough enough to tackle a guy one-on-one. And then even tougher if you've got blockers in the way and you're trying to go through them to stop a guy with the ball. So when you add that to somebody big guy or two big guys getting behind the ball carrier and pushing him forward, that to me seems like it is an unfair advantage and it's not a football play. And I actually don't like, and I think it's always bothered me that the NFL allows offensive players. You see it all the time when offensive linemen push a ball carrier forward when he's being tackled. That to me seems like not right either. So I think it's an unfair advantage for the offense, and so I'm quite in favor of the tush push being outlawed, not just because that the Eagles, who just won the Super Bowl, are very good at it. Other teams have used it as well, but it seems to me to be an unfair advantage. And I'd be quite happy with the NFL to do away with the tush push and any other kind of extra assistance that offensive players give as far as pushing a ball carrier forward when he's being tackled. That's just me.
Hey, it's you, and there's reasons for banning it. Defense and especially special teams were banned in, I think it was 2005. They couldn't push because you used to be able to push a linebacker through the line.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, it's causing too much injuries. You can't do this. It's unfair, blah, blah, blah. And especially on special teams. And they changed the rule. You can't go over the center on kicking plays, whether it be punt or long snap, stuff like that, because it's too big a chance of injury. And you can't assist somebody jumping up, right? Guy can't jump on somebody's back, or, you can't lift him up to block a kick. So why are we letting the offense assist in doing stuff? Is the question, for the reason of banning. And it's a rugby play. It's a scrum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just strength and mass, moving strength and mass back and forth. Okay. But there are some rugby roots in football and vice versa. And it's interesting. Now, those against banning it say, hey, it's an advantage now, but there's lots of teams that do it. Right? It's not unique. And it just like when the Wildcat came out, it took the league by storm for 2 years until defenders figured out how to stop it. And then they got it stopped. And then that fad went up, out. It went in the OC's playbook and it got filed and wasn't used again. And it'll pop up in 20 years or whatever, and just a slight different flavor, but it'll be there. So, do we ban something that is, advantages the offense because the NFL wants the offense to be a high-scoring game, and if that means the tush push keeps the offense on the playing field, I don't know. I think everybody's split about 50-50 on ban it or get rid of it. So this one's going to be an interesting one to watch.
And a lot of the comments from the viewers here would also indicate that there's not a consensus on whether to ban it or let it go ahead. That's one of them. Now let's go to another rule change, which is the Lions are looking to eliminate an automatic first down that's currently given to the offense when the zebras call an illegal contact or a defensive holding penalty. And I'm sure that is not motivated by the fact that the Lions probably got called for the most fucking illegal contact and holding penalties in the NFL last year.
No, you wouldn't say.
But anyway, an interesting one, because I also agree with the Lions in this, because I find with this call, particularly with the illegal contact, tends to happen way before the receiver gets to a spot where a first down would be made. And a lot of those calls seem to be, particularly the illegal contact, ticky-tacky, and it seems to depend very much, no consistency on how it's called. So I think that the nature of the calls and the where they're made is that it's a bit too severe or too much of a reward to give the offense an automatic first down. I'm okay. The Lions rules change is asking that the penalty be 5 yards, not an automatic first down. And I feel that, again, with a lot of these calls being ticky-tacky, very judgmental, that the 5 yards seems more reasonable to me. It would still give the offense an advantage. They get 5 yards that they wouldn't have got, but it doesn't give them the automatic first down and an easy first down.
They don't lose the down.
They don't lose the down, and a lot of these calls extend drives that maybe wouldn't have got extended on a lot of ticky-tack calls. So I'm in agreement with the Lions in changing this.
Now, what if, though, the Lions want to do it because they want to abuse wide receivers?
Yes, I think that that is the other counter argument to it too. I think that, but still, if you're second and 10, and you get and it becomes second and 5, that's still not a bad I think reward for a lot of these penalties, which what I see is very ticky-tacky, almost no contact at all being made.
I can understand the ticky-tacky, but what if the defensive back literally picks up Justin Jefferson and slams him to the ground?
Yes.
To me, that'd be a personal foul. But
yeah. And that could be a 15-yarder in that case.
But
there are some subtleties to this and like different ways to go about it, and that's what they're going to debate. But at first glance, to me, I wouldn't be opposed to that rule change being made at all. Third one, let's look at Lions.
You got to remember, the NFL wants to advantage the offense and more passing because it draws more eyeballs and more scoring. So most likely, this one will not pass. In my guesstimation, Dave's opinion, this one's not going to pass, much to the chagrin of the Detroit Lions.
Yes.
That's why we got the crying kitty.
Yeah. Yeah. Third one was just about the Lions asking for a change in the playoff seeding, and they're looking at doing away with a divisional winner if they've got a lesser, not as good a regular season record as a wild card team. They wouldn't. A divisional winner would not be guaranteed a top 4 seed and a home playoff game. That it would be based on your regular season record, regardless of whether you won the division or not. So that's kind of more that kind of playoff seeding is more like how the NBA does it now, where they have divisions, but basically everybody's playoff is grouped by, top 1 to 8, and then below that is the play-in up to, I think, the top 8, 9 to 12 or 9 to 13 or whatever. So it seems like a fair way to do it, Dave, and certainly would have helped the Vikings last year, who got hosed out of and the Packers would have got hosed at but every year it could be different. Next year it could be the Vikings could be like 9-7, win the division, and then they're like, this is a great playoff system. We get a home game and the higher seed. But when you go to that kind of playoff system, I wonder why you even have divisions at that point, Dave. Like, really,
right? Just stick with the conferences, but there's got to be. The NFL, 100 years, and it's always had divisions of some sort. It's tradition, and it's how scheduling goes.
Mm-hmm.
You'd almost have to blow out the whole theory or the whole system of the NFC North is going to play the AFC North this year, and blah, blah, blah. If you had to rank by record, you'd have to go, all right, we don't know who our opponents are years out because it's based on record. And that would throw a wrench into it. I like the tradition of the division, and I like that if you win your division, even if it's 9-7, or what is it, 9-8 now?
Yes.
You won your division. You were the best thereof. Now, you may be the lowest seeded division winner, and that's fine. But once you win, after the initial round, then I could see the seeding.
Right.
If Minnesota went last year to the second round of the playoffs, and they had, say, they were playing Seattle's, for an example. Seattle won the division. No, Rams won it.
Well, the Rams won it, but say they were playing Tampa Bay.
Right. And Tampa Bay won their division, but the Vikings had the better record, then have Tampa come up to Minnesota. I could see that being a little bit more equitable. But to keep the divisions solid, at least in that first week. But we'll see. Sean says, disagree with your take of Detroit wanting to eliminate 3rd and 15 automatic first down. We'll see. I don't know. But that's on the proposal on the reseeding of the playoffs. We'll see.
We'll see. Final one I want to talk about is the Eagles looking to, I believe it's the Eagles, that they're looking to change the overtime rules and have the regular season overtime rules be the same as they are in the playoffs, which is instead of a 10-minute overtime, you got a 50-minute overtime, and both teams are guaranteed possession of the ball. And I would be in favor of this one as well. The NFL is, at least with its regular season overtime rules, the NFL is the only sport I know of that in the overtime where it's possible that a team, either team does not have a chance to have possession of the ball or the puck or whatever. Sometimes in hockey, in overtime, it's in theory, you could have a team that would never, one team could not get possession of the puck and the game would be over because the other team scores without them touching it. But the potential is there. And in this case, a little bit different, I think, in football, because one team has the ball and has the opportunity to move the ball. So it seems to me that's
7 points, game's over.
Yeah. And so that this has always seemed to me the way it is now in regular season and the way it used to be even before, where if you even got a field goal, the game was over. And that always seemed like a very arbitrary, weird way of deciding.
First to score points.
First to score. Always seemed to be a weird, unfair way of awarding a winner when the teams ended up tied at the end of regulation.
And then you're basing it on a coin flip. Yeah.
Yes, on a coin flip. So the NFL has made it that fairer as the years have gone on, but I feel this would be even fairer still for the regular season. Might lead to more ties in the regular season, and I don't know whether the NFL would like that or whether they care, but I think I would be in favor of this one. And there's some other rules that are being thrown out. One, Dave, I'm sure that's piqued your interest, is on the free agency market, which is that they be allowing teams during the legal tampering period, they'd be able to have one phone call or a video call with the free agent that they apparently are not allowed to.
It's like, getting read your Miranda rights. You have one call to make. Who's it going to be?
But those four are the ones that were, I think, will have the most impact on the field as they're being considered. And like you talked about earlier, those two, the illegal contact, the holding penalty, and the one about the tush push, I don't like their chances of being changed, because scoring was up last year in the NFL compared to the past few years, but owners, I think, believe that fans want to see more scoring as opposed to less. And so if you're taking away making rule changes that make it less, that take away some of the advantages to the offense, I don't think that there's going to be enough support for those to get those passed.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel it's going to work. Offense is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to this, and we'll find out. The guy's going to enjoy a nice week in Florida. We're going to see, the local press will be down there asking them questions, which should be interesting. And we're going to see pictures. I think this is the same place that they had the meetings when KOC and Kwesi were hired.
Mm.
And because I remember them pictures, and it was subtropical. They had palm trees and all that, and it was. But we'll see. I find it fascinating how the league works, and they're going to, whatever decision they make, it's going to be in benefit of the league on all those rules. So, hey, I want to thank everybody for watching. We went over what we think is the floor for JJ McCarthy starting this year, and how well he's going to do, and how it can become truly epic. And I think the floor is higher than we've seen in a long time. We went over in theme 2 things, the second wave of free agency, and then we just talked about the rule changes that favor the Vikings or the league, the offense. And remember, we have an offensive coach, so we got to think about those things. But it'll be interesting. Have you got any last words there, Darren?
Not really, David. We'll see if the next week or two are sort of dry as far as Vikings news goes, without the Rodgers talk anymore. But we're going to be heating up in draft. It's draft time now. Time to focus on the draft, Dave. And that's what we're First and SKOL is going to be doing. Particularly, I know Tyler's probably got some players he's got to hone in on to highlight that could be Viking targets. Going to be fun.
And Northfield says he's going on with Yogi at 7. This will be interesting. I got to tune into that. And I hope everybody else does as well. So we should see. Big said Falcons lost 5th round pick for tampering. Yeah. That's because their quarterback blabbed his mouth. The whole tampering. They should say it starts at the All-Star games and let it go. But we'll see. Robbie says, what for that Fuller confirmation or then Tannehill? Tannehill's an interesting one. We'll see how that goes. And there'll be more of that this week. We got Tyler on Monday. We have Sal on Tuesday. We're going to start out the week right. And then I've got to clean and pack. Anyways, with that, what do we say, buddy?
We say SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings, and thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!